Great innovation stories make change possible. Each week on the Innovation Storytellers podcast, I invite innovation leaders to share how they overcame the obstacles to introduce breakthrough ideas to the world through the power of story. I'm featuring guests from Tesla, TD Ameritrade, Corning, Cisco, Bloomberg, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can tell a more effective innovation story and change the future for the better. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Innovation Storytellers. I am beyond thrilled to reunite with someone I met at a fantastic conference, the Innovators Conference in Paris 3 years ago now, talking about a topic that I hoped I'd never have to learn, but I am so grateful that I have, and that is the author of Innovation Accounting, Dan Toma. So not only has Dan written the Bible on how we actually account for innovations and how we'll value these innovations that have yet even to reach their finish line, reach the market, giving us the tools and tips to how to do that. But most of you probably know Dan from his first book, The Corporate Startup, which paved the way for corporations to understand how to best work with startups and how to unite that really fiery innovation spirit of a startup and combine it with the power and the resources and the capabilities of a giant corporation. Dan is also on the Thinkers 50 2020 radar. If you don't know Thinkers 50, this is where all the brilliant minds from around the world are recognized for what possibilities still exist in the world. He's also a partner at Outcome and is a working group member of the World Economic Forum. So if those aren't illustrious enough titles, then I'm sorry to let you down. But Dan, I couldn't be more impressed if I tried. So welcome to Innovation Storytellers.
Thank you very much for having me, Susan. It's great to reconnect, and it's great to have this chat and have this opportunity to present the latest book, Innovation Accounting.
Yeah, so Innovation Accounting, I can't think of a more important and maybe less exciting title, but I have a feeling you're going to be able to share with us why we should place more interest, more time, and more attention on innovation accounting. So why do we need it? Dan, why do we need innovation accounting at all? Why can't we just use regular old financial accounting?
Well, it has to do with storytelling, actually. It has to do with the fact that if we only use, and again, it's not just me. I mean, I've experienced this firsthand when I was a product owner for a large organization, actually in telecommunication industry, pretty interesting things we were doing back then. And I realized I needed a certain story to tell my managers in between that moment in time and 2 years or 3 years down the line when those products I was working on were to become profitable. I was having these weeklies with a direct manager, and I think every quarter I was presenting to the board of the department, at least not the board of the entire corporation, because it's like 300,000 people corporation. So I was pretty far down the food chain to present to the board. But nevertheless, the questions were all revolving around profitability, profit, revenue, and we were dealing with products that we essentially launched in the past 3 weeks, maybe 3 months was probably the oldest product. So essentially I had nothing to show for, but I had a very interesting requests. Can I have another engineer? Can I get another 100,000 euros for a marketing campaign?
Sure, you've got that laying around.
Exactly, right? Where can you free up that essential lab that we have there? I want to do some user testing there, or so on and so forth. And by the way, there is this great conference happening in New York, and I need to fly half of the team there because they need to present on that stage and so on and so forth, with nothing to show for. I had nothing to show for. All my numbers were essentially zero.
Or negative.
Actually, they were negative, right? And these are all my numbers that I was asked to present, right? The problem is, and again, you go through this PT cycle where you pity yourself because you have this job, and then you be like, no, this is not me, this is this company. And then from this company, you say, no, this is this industry that I'm in. And then you go and speak at an event and you realize that automotive is the same as telecommunication, or pharma is the same as telecommunication. And you'd be like, no, I figure it out. Is this country that I'm in that's pretty bad? And then you move country, where you talk to people from other countries and realize that this is actually a pandemic. Right? Everybody's suffering from the same problem. And the problem is actually rooted in the fact that a lot of the people, again, I'm sorry if I offend anybody that's listening in, but a lot of people that sit on boards today haven't had any formal entrepreneurial education. Most of them haven't.
Is there such a thing as formal entrepreneurial education, or do we just all go in there and start companies and hope for the best?
Well, I think that nowadays you see it what's happening at Berkeley, Stanford, Columbia, and even here in Europe, right? There's a lot of universities that have entrepreneurial courses. You can't mimic the experience of having a startup by attending an MBA program, that's for sure. But I think there is still merit in having formal entrepreneurial education. At least you get acquainted with some terms. At least you get acquainted with some new ideas that don't necessarily transfer from the project management world. So I think there is credit to be given to a formal entrepreneurial education. Obviously, it's not a substitute for the real life, right? You can attend all the courses in fishing. If you haven't gone fishing yourself, you're not going to become a better fisherman in any way.
You know, I often say that. I was like, you can read a book on swimming, but you'll probably drown.
100%. Actually, tomorrow I'm taking my girlfriend out to teach her how to swim. So this fits very well. She was actually watching some YouTube videos on that. And I said, well, watch all the videos, but I'm going to show you tomorrow in the pool. It's a bit different.
So you're saying that board members don't really get entrepreneurship if they've lived a corporate life, if they've never worked with startups before. And so accounting for them is a huge challenge.
It's, yeah, exactly. It's very difficult to tell the story of your innovation idea, of your product, essentially. It doesn't even have to be innovation. Even if it's something that you just launched yesterday, it might just be an incremental improvement of an old product, or a product that looks more like sustainable innovation or digital transformation than anything else. But essentially, you have to paint a picture for those people. You have to tell a story for those people that haven't had entrepreneurial education. They don't know what it means to be early stage. And innovation accounting is essentially giving you the right tools and the right methodologies in order to tell that story of what's happening with your product. Why should I, as an executive, continue to invest in you when I have all these other things I can invest in? You have to show me that there is light at the end of the tunnel, essentially. And I think this is what innovation accounting does. VCs know how to do that, but they know how to do that because this is how they survive. If they don't know how to do that, they will be out of money and out of business in the following year, right? And why I'm bringing up the VCs, because a lot of the companies we look at now as being super innovative or being disruptors of a certain industry have been struggling financially for 5, if not 10 years. FedEx wasn't profitable in the first 5 years. Tesla wasn't profitable in the first 5 years. Amazon hasn't been profitable in more than 5 years, right? But then again, they had a story to tell to the investors why they need to continue backing up their idea, their innovation, if you want. And that story wasn't all unicorns and let's disrupt and all these slogans, if you want. That story was rooted in some indicators. Obviously, nobody's going to tell you now exactly what indicators they use, because this obviously changed over time. But we can imagine that they used indicators such as usage, such as churn, indicators around the stickiness of their proposition, around the virality of what they offer and how people interact with their solution or their offering, so on and so forth. Essentially, all these things came together and built a story for why you as an investor should not freak out and take your money out of Tesla. On the contrary, go and dig deeper in that pocket and bring more money to the next investors meeting.
Yeah. So your chapter 1 starts off with what is innovation, right? How do we even quantify what this thing is? Because it really feels very different in every company too. So how do you help the reader understand what innovation is, or how do you help them define it?
Well, I don't think we should start by saying there is one definition of innovation. I think we should start by saying what innovation is not.
Okay.
And that's going to be a good stepping stone for a lot of people in the corporate world. First of all, innovation is not R&D. As much as we like to think of innovation equaling R&D, innovation is not R&D. And if I offended anybody from the listeners now,
really the goal here, Dan, by the way, we're looking to offend and provoke our listening base to really think about something new. So go ahead.
The argument for what I just said is an example that dates back to the 80s. Xerox invested a lot and was investing a lot in R&D. They had this Palo Alto Research Center in the Bay Area. It was called PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, super innovative name. And they were playing around with crazy ideas, right, back in the day. Most of them were not seeing the light outside. They were stuck in the lab and just remaining there. And at one point, they opened door day and they've invited people from the local IT club, computers club, geeks, local startup community, not even called startups back then. One of the people that showed up at this PARC visit was Steve Jobs. He just founded Apple, 2 or 3 years prior to that visit. And then he stumbled upon a very interesting invention, R&D outcome, if you want, of PARC. And that was a thing that we now refer to as the mouse. Essentially was a sphere that was sitting in a square, and whenever you were moving the sphere, you will see a cursor on a screen moving. And that was staying there, and the people in Palo Alto Research Center said, well, yeah, we invented this, but we don't know what to do with it. And Steve Jobs actually acquired the IP from PARC for the grand total of $100. So now he was able to innovate, meaning that he built a sustainable business model on top of an R&D invention. So again, I keep saying that every company should define what innovation means for them. And they should be very clear on that innovation and make sure that that particular definition of innovation is essentially lived by and endorsed by everybody in the company. However, you should never copy the homework from the company across the street, no matter how similar you are. Right. If you're hearing this in DuPont, don't go and copy 3M's homework. They have a different definition than you, and they need innovation probably for different reasons than you do. If you are in Daimler, don't copy it from BMW, and so on and so forth. But what's important to understand is that you need the novelty element and the financial success element, the sustainable business model element. How you actually define innovation is going to be up to you, but don't just use, it needs to be something new, because that's not innovation, that's novelty, that's R&D, that is invention. This is why we make it very clear in the first chapter that, hey, before you put any KPIs on top of innovation, you need to define what innovation is, because depending on your definition and your goals for investing in innovation, those KPIs will differ. Mm-hmm. If I say, this is what we mean by innovation, this is my definition of innovation in my company, and we are investing in innovation because X, Y, Z reasons, then the KPIs should enforce a behavior that is driving people to achieve those goals. These things need to be connected. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess. You're going to have the definition saying one thing, your expectations being different, and the way you measure everything is going to be totally different. So it's very important to start there. Obviously, in the book, we focus on breakthrough innovation. So essentially something new with a sustainable business model. But if you are listening in from a more conservative organization that just wants to do digital transformation and that's your definition of innovation, that's totally fine. There are some indicators you can use from our work, but I would encourage you to, again, look at what you're trying to achieve, what's the goal of innovation, and bringing it back to how do you measure it today.
So, with that in mind, there are a lot of myths around measuring inputs, outputs, progress, failing, learning, etc. What are some of the myths around measurement?
So many of them, and it's a very good question. We documented some of the myths of measuring innovation in the book, but I think that myths around measuring innovation are very much intertwined with myths around how we generally measure stuff. With respect to innovation, I would say that one of the biggest myths is that it can't be measured. Right? I would argue the opposite, and I know a lot of people that would argue the opposite. There are obviously myths around innovation being creativity and again not being able to measure that. But again, that's not what innovation is, and that's not what measuring innovation needs to look like. There are myths obviously around the fact that everything is a key performance indicator, and this is one of my favorites because whenever you talk with people, everybody will say, yeah, we need a KPI for that, or this KPI shows you X and the other one shows you Y. And then you realize that essentially they're not talking about KPIs, they're talking about KRIs, not key performance indicators, but key results indicators. An outcome of a process. If I'm going to speak now to a banking executive and I'm going to ask her about return on net assets on her financial year, that return on net asset is not a key performance indicator. That is a key result indicator. There's been some things happening in the background with those assets that resulted in that particular result, that resulted in a particular outcome after a certain process. So I think it's very important to make the distinction between KPIs and KRIs. One is measuring progress and process. The other one is measuring outcomes and results. And again, this is a big one because a lot of people just essentially substitute one for the other.
Yeah, but so even if we have that though, how do we assign a monetary number to progress?
Assigning monetary number to progress is very difficult, especially if we're looking at innovation, especially if we're looking at impact, for example, sustainability, right? We take some actions now that are going to have impact in the following 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So we need to find proxies for that future today. How do I know that I am going to make the Olympics team when I'm such a terrible runner or swimmer? Let's continue with that example, right? I'm a terrible swimmer. How will I know today if I'm going to make the Olympic team in 4 years? Well, if I go practice every day, that's a good indicator that I'm taking that challenge seriously. If I win my locals, I am going to most likely be in a better position to be spotted by a coach from the national Olympic team.
Right.
Or if every time I go swimming, I improve my time by a fraction of a second, that is progress. That's not guarantee that I will make the Olympic swimming team in 4 years, but at least it shows that I am on track to become a better swimmer and eventually make that Olympic team. Obviously, I should set myself some milestones right down the line. If I don't make the local team by the year's end or in 2 years, I don't stand a chance of making the Olympic team, and so on and so forth. So essentially, you break down your end goal vision to indicators that you can measure along the way. When I was a product owner, I was measuring our overall success on churn and usage. If I was able to improve usage per week of the application and reduce churn week by week, I knew that at one point my app was going to be so addictive that even if I'm going to charge people €5 to have it, they will still buy. Or I knew that even
And
if
€5 was a lot, right? I mean, I remember
it was
we're
a
like,
lot for an app, right?
I believe these people are charging me 99 cents for a download. Like, I remember those initial conversations. Like, what am I, made of money?
Yeah, exactly. Even if I had another business model in mind that revolved around ads and showing ads, displaying ads, and making money off that, I knew as a product owner that if I have good usage, if I have low churn, it means that I will be successful with that business model. But I needed to put in the work and improve those indicators every week.
So it's about remaining constant, remaining steady, constantly reviewing where we are and making small tweaks along the way that make our measurements clearer. I think that makes sense.
As you are progressing, you always need to analyze if those indicators are still valid for you. Because as you mature,
Sure.
you might need to use other indicators. Again, I'm going to use a sports analogy here. Think of kids, right? Swimming again. When you are 12, there are certain benchmarks that qualify you to make the Olympics team when you were 12, or the national team, or whatever. But once you grow, once you become 16, 18, 21, there are other benchmarks for that. And we should never measure the performance of a 12-year-old through the lens of the benchmark of a 21-year-old, because those are totally different.
Sure.
And we sometimes make that mistake in corporations, in business. We make that mistake because we tend to essentially evaluate the performance of a startup that just started 3 weeks ago through the lens of indicators that we use for the core business that we've been having for 100 years.
Right.
That's essentially using the standards for the Olympic gold medal final to somebody that's 12 years old. They will never qualify. You're going to be super disappointed by what you're going to find in the pool.
You're right. It's like a kid trying out for his junior high basketball team and being compared with the stats of Michael Jordan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if we put it like this, everybody understands it, right? But if you bring it to the business context, everybody's like, yeah, well, of course we're going to measure, I don't know, ROI and RONA and other great financial indicators. I'm not saying that those indicators are bad. I'm just saying that the way we use them is wrong, and when we use them is wrong.
Yeah. So Dan, I'm just going to take a break here. It's Susan here. And if you like what you're hearing so far, make sure you never miss an episode of Innovation Storytellers by clicking the subscribe button now. So this podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So first, thank you for being here and enjoying this wonderful conversation I'm having with Dan today. And whether this is your first time or you're 10 episodes deep, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do with innovation leaders, just head over to susanlindner.com for more information. So, Dan, getting back to this issue of trying to be like Michael Jordan when you're in the thick of innovating, and frankly, you're in the thick of failure. You're in the thick of watching stuff go wrong. What happens when you start applying financial accounting processes to this amazing, scrappy team of innovators who's really trying to move the ball forward, is trying to think 3 to 5 years ahead of time, is trying to keep that giant corporation on the Fortune 500 list? When financial accounting walks in the room, what should the innovator do? What should all my listeners be doing when the CFO comes in and says, you're losing us millions? When am I going to see some results?
Yeah, you need to tell the story of progress, essentially. You need to tell the story of, on one hand, progress, and on the other hand, speed, time, and above all, look at what I have prevented from happening.
Yes, this last one is so important.
Yes, this is why I kept it for last.
Yeah, CFOs do not know how to account of, I stopped the train wreck that was coming at us at 1,000,000 miles an hour down this track.
And
Talk
again,
more about that.
In the book, we have a list of conundrums of financial accounting. That's what we call them. Essentially, how financial accounting lets us down. One of the top ones is the fact that financial accounting can't account for stuff that hasn't happened, right? It can only account for stuff that is in the past and has happened. Mm-hmm. What do I mean by stuff that hasn't happened? We kick off a project tomorrow. The CFO is invited to the kickoff. The CEO is there. The product lead is there. Everybody's there. Everybody's pumped. Everybody thinks, yes, this is a great product. This is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. So we're going to go and invest no matter how much it costs to bring this to market. The price bill is going to be there, right? You're going to find yourself writing invoices for north of 10 million as a CFO. That's fine.
Okay.
But then at one point, you have the product owner coming in 3 weeks down the line and say, hey, we realize that that amazing product that we just thought about, nobody wants it. We performed this many customer interviews. Nobody identified it as a problem. We didn't believe them, obviously, because we still believe in our grand vision. But then we performed this fake door experiment and nobody clicked. But still, we didn't believe them because we're still very much rooted in the vision. But then we created this ads campaign and nobody clicked. And then we did all these other 5 experiments in the past 3 weeks. Obviously, it's a bit ridiculous to say 5 experiments in 3 weeks, but anyways, it could be.
You could do some, A/B testing. Sure.
Let's say you had 3 months. We've done all these great experiments in the past 3 months and all pointed to one single conclusion. Nobody wants the damn thing.
That's right. It sucks.
It's terrible. This is the worst idea we ever had.
Which,
right?
by the way, was the original market research conducted by 3M about Post-it notes, right? We do know that everyone thought it was the dumbest idea ever until it wasn't.
But they changed. The problem with the story is that it gives you a false impression that yes, serendipity can happen and all of those things. But the problem with that was that they actually had a pivot. They kept the technology, they pivoted the problem hypothesis, they pivoted the customer segment. Essentially, it was not even a pivot. It was like a totally new idea that needed to be researched.
Right. Sticky bookmarks was not the way to market that product, right?
Exactly. So again, going back to our story, right? 3 months in, you've burned through, let's say, $1 million. But what you have done, you have prevented all the other 9 million you had in a bank account from being spent on something that will never work.
Right.
Because at the beginning of the project, most likely you're going to be asked for a financial estimate. Like, how much will this cost? Oh, I believe 10 million. Awesome. I'm not going to give you 10 million now because we're smart. We do meter funding nowadays. We're no longer signing off 10 million checks. But it's fine. I got you. They're in the bank account. Once you need it, you can access them, providing that you wrote enough reports and you came up with enough Excels to prove that you are worth 10 million. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, 3 months down the line, you've spent 1 million. What you have achieved, essentially nothing that can be deposited in the bank. But you have prevented all the other 9 millions from being spent. And you deserve a medal for that.
Yeah.
Why? Because with all those 9 millions left, we can try out another 9 great ideas.
Right. And if we can also track whether or not our competitors went down that bad road while we stayed away from it. And there are countless examples of that. And I love these examples, because when I think about, let's say, a company like Dollar Shave Club, right? Home delivery of razors. These are the guys who made buying your razors and your razor blades and your shaving cream over the internet cool and fun. And then you watch Gillette start its own Gillette Club for you to get your razor blades at home. And I have never met a member of the Gillette Club in my life. Meanwhile, 5 years into launch, Dollar Shave Club winds up assuming 61% market share and winds up getting acquired by Unilever for $1 billion. And it's razors and shave cream. And they managed to figure out how to pull those levers and make it work. And unfortunately, Gillette probably went down a very expensive marketing path just trying to keep up.
So again, this is why you need innovation accounting, because again, this is one of the biggest problems of financial accounting, that you can't show stuff that hasn't happened. With innovation accounting, you can show it. You can show it for validated learning.
That's right. And who can put a price on that, Dan?
The CFO should.
The CFO should, right. It's interesting also kind of like to toss the ball of responsibility back into the lap of the CFO as a reminder of, we're going to have 2 different columns here. There's a column that goes on the innovation R&D side of the world, and there's a column that happens in the meet your quarterly goals side of the world. And it's 2 different, I don't want to say 2 different sets of books. It's 2 different ways of looking at the numbers.
Another big mistake people make whenever they're dealing with financial controllers or with a CFO is that they tend to view them, especially if you're in product, listening this from product or from innovation background, you tend to view those people as the party breakers. And I think we should move away from
What do you mean
viewing.
the party breakers?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Kind of like womp womp, like they make the party end.
Yeah, like, oh, we were having so much fun here with this technology, and then all of a sudden the CFO walked in and she wants now to see this indicators. I don't want to do that. Right? I want to go back and play with my geeky friends and talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain and whatever else is cool out there, right? They're not party breakers. And I think the more we view the world in us versus them, the worse is going to be for both of us.
Yeah.
It's very important, again, to educate the financial controllers, the auditors, the CFO, the director of finance. And it's very important for you to get educated on the way they view the world and find common ground. And again, we hope that for innovation accounting, there will be common ground. And we hope that this is going to bring people together, not divide them further apart. It's very important for everybody to work together and stop having this us versus them mindset. Again, we come from different backgrounds. We see the world in a different way, but at the end of the day, we're all playing for the same team. And the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back of the jersey.
We are getting more sports metaphors in this one segment than I think I have gotten in 30 episodes of Innovation Storytellers. This is great.
I'm sorry about that.
Which is funny because my approach to sports is like, go team. I really have, that's about the extent of my loyalty to any one given organization. But I want to shift the tables a little bit, Dan, and I want to put you on the hot seat for a second. So tell me what you think is the greatest innovation of all time.
Greatest innovation of all time. Of all time, including like the ancient times.
All time.
All time.
All time.
Can I pick two?
Oh, I want to say no, but I'm now.
No, okay.
So go ahead. No, it's fine. Go.
I think the wheel is very important.
The wheel's a good one.
And probably I would go with fire. But if I would only have to pick one, it would most likely be the wheel.
Well done, sir. Okay. And if you could join any innovation team throughout history, what innovation team would you want to be on?
Oh, definitely NASA.
NASA?
Definitely, by far, NASA in the 60s, the space race, yeah, by far that. Like, there's no other one that goes anywhere near.
So man on the moon kind of thing?
Kind of that, yeah.
Man on the moon. Fantastic. Okay. Last question. If you could look into the future, what innovation are you most craving? What would you love to see invented that has not yet been invented?
I think there should be a technology around bringing people even closer together. It's great that we have this over Zoom and you're sitting.
You mean Facebook isn't doing it for you?
Right, exactly. I want to feel this meeting, or to be able to feel any meeting, more for just eyes and ears. To be able to sense the things that you are sensing while there, and to be more closer to you than through Zoom. So I'm hoping that I'm going to live and see this. I hope that at one point I'm going to look back at Zoom and say, oh, we use Zoom?
Wait, are you talking about holograms? Are you talking about smell-o-vision? What are we going to see right now?
I think something around VR combined with holograms. I'm putting my headset on and I'm seeing you, not just a talking head, and I'm there with you, and I can also see your surrounding, not just the virtual background or whatever you decide to show me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm able to immerse in your space more than I can through Zoom. I think that this will be great because I think this is going to bring down some barriers. I think that with 5G technology, that will be definitely possible. This is an engineer talking.
Dan, you're taking online dating into a whole different place right now.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I don't know if all of us are ready for that just yet, but it's going to be pretty exciting. So
Definitely.
Dan, tell us, where can people get a copy of Innovation Accounting?
Well, given the current supply chain issue, I would say try Amazon. If not, type in innovationaccountingbook.com. That's our landing page. We also have a blog there. We try to update it constantly with new thought pieces. By the way, if you have something cool to add to that blog, drop me a line. We are pretty open to having contributor pieces. We don't have certain criteria besides if it's a good piece, we're going to publish it. And good is defined by me and Esther with very clear KPIs revolving around us liking it.
There you go.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
objective, I could tell.
100%. We're a serious organization. And try going to innovationaccountingbook.com. There's going to be links there for your local Amazon. If not, the publisher website has it. And depending on where you're listening this or where you want to order this around the world, there might be some shipping costs included.
Wonderful. Dan, I'm so grateful that you could join us today, and always happy to hear that innovation accounting is part of your storytelling journey as an innovator. And so while you're trying to impress your CEO with all the great ideas and the amazing product you're going to create, don't forget to measure the right things, to establish the clear indicators, and make sure that you're painting a picture of the future that looks honest and bright for the executives who are going to hand you a lot of cash. So let's make sure those indicators are right on track. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Susan.
Have a great one.
You too.
Now you might be asking, Susan, why innovation storytelling? Well, the truth is that an innovation story told well not only breaks down communication barriers so you can drive change and new growth, but it also helps other people remember and champion your work. And it propels your best ideas forward faster to secure you the runway, resources, and recognition you so richly deserve. In other words, stories are memory-making devices that significantly reduce the time it takes for you and your innovation to be understood. But like many leaders, you probably never got the memo that storytelling skills would be central to your success. Well, I've got some good news for you. It's not too late because I've got you covered. Whether you need an expert to come and speak to your innovation leaders, you need training in the art and method of innovation storytelling, or you just need the support and guidance of a consultant who can get you where you want to go in less time, visit www.susanlinder.com today to learn more and to set up a call to discuss your needs. I'm so looking forward to connecting with you and to helping you tell a great innovation story. If you liked what you heard so far, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. And leave us a comment. Tell us what you think of this episode. We'd love to hear from you. And if you didn't like what you've heard, just forget everything I've said.